Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats Weekly Podcast, episode number 109. I'm your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If he can't do it, there's probably no chance you can. And this is the world's first podcast, fully 110% and sometimes 150%. Dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the world. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. Good to have you on board the good ship Hooked on Wooden Boats. We've been doing this podcast for a little bit over 2 years. When I say we, that's me, myself, and I. Today's featured segment is a continuation of my Interview the Expert series. Today we're discussing SkinOnFrame Boat Building with Corey Freedman. Corey is the owner of the Skin Boat School in Anacortes, Washington. He's been building beautiful skin-on-frame boats since 1990, and he really is an expert at it. He's got a school there you can attend and make your own boat, and his website address is skinboats.org, in case you want to check that out. If you are interested in other construction building methods, episode 99 of Hooked on Wooden Boats was an interview with Jeff Hammond on Carvel planking. Episode 104 was stitch and glue building with John Harris. Episode 105, Lapstrake building with Jay Smith. Episode 106, strip planked building with Bruce Blatchley. And episode 107 was cold molded building with Sean Kuman. So check out those other episodes. By the way, to get to a particular episode by number, you can just put in to your URL hookedonwoodenboats.com/ and then the episode number. So they're all 3 digits. So for episode 99, you'd put in 099. Episode 105, you just put in 105, etc. So check that out when you get a chance. If you are new to the podcast, or even if you're not new, you may not be aware that there is an index on my website of all 109 podcasts that I've done. If you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com, at the very top on the menus, you'll see index. If you click on that, there's a full list, starting with episode 1, of each podcast, who is in the podcast, what it's about, just a brief description, and a link there you can click on if you want to go read the show notes on that podcast or to listen to the podcast. It's kind of a quick way to get around. With 109 episodes floating around out there, it can be a little overwhelming to try to navigate through that, so that's why I created this index page. I received some voicemail feedback this week, which is pretty cool, from Daryl Foster in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And so I'm going to play that here. It's about a minute or so in length, so take it away, Daryl.
Hey Dan, this is Daryl from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Been listening to your podcast, been really enjoying it. It's been awesome. I think I listened to them all now, and I've only been listening to them for a couple months. Got interested in boats. I have actually not done a whole lot of kayaking. I'm a trim carpenter by trade, and just got interested in it and started to build a kayak from Nick Shade. I got a plan from him, and just been building away. I've got the mold set up and all lined up and ready to start actually putting it together. All my strips, I've milled them all out, cove and bead. I'm building the double great Ock tandem kayak. I'm excited to get it done and just try my hand at kayaking. So just wanted to let you know I appreciate your podcast. Got my interest up for sure. And wooden boats. Now whenever I see a wooden boat around, I'm always definitely interested, and it's started a new hobby for me. So I do just wanted to let you know I do appreciate it, and keep up the good work. I'll have to send you some pictures, and maybe we'll catch up sometime. Talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for those kind comments, Daryl. I do appreciate your feedback. Glad you're enjoying the podcast, and it's encouraging you to get in the wooden boat game, which is what my goal is here. And I wish you the best on building your Nick Shade strip planked kayak. I'm a little jealous because I have not built a strip plank boat, but it's on my short list. So thanks so much again, and shoot me some pictures if you would as your boat progresses. I would appreciate it. We have some new subscribers this week to the monthly newsletter and email list. Tom Pamperin and David Handren. Welcome to the list, guys. Good to have you on board. In case you're not a subscriber, I would encourage you to do so. I send out a monthly newsletter. And some months it's later than others, like this month. My goal is to have it out by the 15th, and I'm recording this on the 23rd, and I don't have it out yet. I will have it out before or by October 31st, because I want to do one a month, and I've got some stuff I want to discuss and have a little fun with it. So if you're not a subscriber, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Give me your first and last name and email address, and you're on board. It doesn't cost anything. It's totally free. It's a great way for me to connect with the community. It's a lot of fun, so check it out. Well, August 15th, I published my first eBook called Get in the Wooden Boat Game, a guide for building your first boat. If you are preparing or thinking about building your first boat, this would be a great read for you. It really walks you through the pre-planning process to look at factors such as the cost to build a boat, the time to build the boat, what kind of workspace you might need, what the construction methods are, tips and tricks and things, just little decisions like should I build a rowboat or powerboat or a sailboat. There's some big differences there in cost and time to build. So it's a great book. I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. It costs $4.99, which is a great deal, I think. It's an electronic book with lots of links. If you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/ebook1, there's more information there, and you can click and purchase if you would like to, and I would encourage you to do that. Well, the week wouldn't be complete without my Scamp update. For those of you that don't know, I started building a Scamp sailboat from a kit in June, and the boat is now fully assembled. The kit is fully assembled. I finished it last week. And the only thing I've got left to do is put one more coat of epoxy on the rudder. But the centerboard and rudder are fully assembled, and the boat's fully assembled. So last Friday we had a sunny day here in Arlington, Washington. My son and I took the boat over to Lake Goodwin on a trailer and put her in the water, and I had a little 36-pound thrust electric trolling motor for my other boat that I've strapped on her transom, and we dropped her in the lake and went out for a little spin. It was really fun. It was just cool to get a boat in the water for the first time, even though there's no paint or varnish on her and there's finish work to do. She floated great. We had a fun time, took a bunch of pictures. Also took some video, which I'm in the process of editing, and as soon as I edit that, I'm going to publish it on my website and on YouTube. Which, by the way, if you go to you go to youtube.com/woodenboatdan, you can find, I think I've got 10 or 12 videos up there now. So check that out. But anyway, I'm going to get a video of the Scamp launching on my website and on YouTube. So the boat is for sale now. I'm going in full swing on advertising and asking $7,200 for her. We've got about 210 hours and $4,400 into the boat. So if you do the math, it's a little more than minimum wage, but hey, that's not that bad considering you get to do something you love to do. And she did come out nice. If you have an interest or you just want more details, you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/scamp for sale. Or you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/scamp, where I have all the details of the build, all the costs broken down, the hours broken down, lots of pictures of the build along the way. So it's fun stuff. I would encourage you to check it out. I also wanted to mention my friend Marty Loken on Marrowstone Island near Port Townsend runs the Pocket Yachters website. The address is pocketyachters.com. And on there he has boats for sale also, traditional and wooden boats, small boats typically. And I would encourage you to check that out too if you're interested in purchasing a boat. pocketyachters.com. We are going to move on to the interview now with Corey Freedman. And by the way, I did interview Corey early on in podcast time. And I'm going to look up here the podcast number that is. I think it's 5 or something like that. Yep. So if you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/005 is the first interview I did with Corey, it's really cool because I talk about his personal history, how he got involved in building skin boats. It's really a fascinating story. He got real interested in it, kind of holed himself up for a couple of years and studied everything he could, and then started building them and became an expert. So it's a really fun story. I would encourage you to check that out. So we're going to go ahead and roll the tape. This is a phone interview I did with Corey, talking about SkinOnFrame boat building and what that looks like and what the advantages and disadvantages are. So take it away, Corey. Okay, it's October 18th, 2013. I'm on the phone with Corey Freedman from Anacortes, Washington. Corey, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's actually the second time you've been on. I came up and interviewed you, of course, in 2011. I think it was episode number 5 or 7 or something like that. We had a good time at your shop there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah. So anyway, this is part of my series called Interview the Expert, where we're looking at different building construction methods for wooden boats and traditional boats. And we're going to be talking about SkinOnFrame boats today. Corey is an expert at this. He's been building these for, 25, 30 years, Corey?
Well, no, not quite, but 23 anyway.
23, okay. And I know you've studied a lot on the traditional methods and so on. So let's start here, Corey. If you could give me a little history of SkinOnFrame boats and a description of that method of building.
Well, we know there's more than going back in history. We know the skin boat goes back at least 4,000 years. A lot of us believe, though, it's more like 10 or even perhaps 20,000 years. There's been parts thought to be parts of umiaks, the large open boats that have been carbon dated that long from the Aleutian Islands. So they have a long history, longer than recorded history. And for the same reasons why they were built then, is a reason why we're building them now. Scarce of materials, time constraints, expense, these sorts of things. So we know there's over 50 different boats, and they were found from Siberia to Greenland. But that's just the Arctic boats. If you go far enough back in history in different developing places all over the world, you'll find evidence of SkinOnFrame boats. For instance, in Ireland with the currachs and the coracles, for instance.
When were the coracles first built, Corey?
That's a good question. I really don't know that much about the history of the currachs and the coracles. But as far as I can tell, it goes into thousands of years.
Yeah, those are kind of a basket type boat. Is that right?
The coracles are. The currachs are very dory-like. They're open boats. They're multi-chine, and they're still being used today. They're using cowhide now. I don't know what was used in the way ancient times, but there's been a rejuvenation, I know, in Ireland, and they're being built again. I know because we sell materials, modern materials, for their skin systems now. We've been shipping quite a few packages over there. But they were used for fishing in the inter-islands. I don't know if anyone's seen the film The Secret of Rona Inish. It's a beautiful film. And the currach is instrumental part of the film, and very, very fun. And you can see an example of a real traditional one, and how they were used and how they fish with them.
So skin boats were really among some of the first boats ever built in the world in civilization, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's the fact. Those in the dugouts.
Yeah, okay. So describe to me what the skin-on-frame method is exactly, Corey, at least in how you would build a boat today for people listening.
Well, if you look far enough in old dictionaries, the history of a kayak is a discrete wooden framework that's tied and lashed together, and then covered with a skin and an occupant for one or two riders. That's the definition of a kayak. The way skin-on-frame is construction is it has an independent skeletal frame. In our case, and in most cases, it's done with solid wood. There's no glue or metal, and then it's covered with a membrane of some sort. It can be many different things. We've been using ballistic nylon with the urethane system. It's the lightest, strongest system that we know of right now, that stays alive, that stays flexible. And if you notice, I mentioned no glue or metal because we need our joints to be free. We need them to move and be flexible. There's in some cases in modern boats, people are freezing them with epoxy, and it's a pretty bad mistake. If you can imagine a tree and then introduce a big windstorm to that tree, and normally the tree doesn't have a problem surviving it. But if you freeze that tree in an ice storm and then present the wind, the tree can obviously break. So you never want to freeze your boat. You want to keep it a tree. You want to keep it flexible. You don't want to freeze those joints. It's very important. So we build this way not to be traditionalists or purists. It's just it's the way that we can get these historic light weights. Generally, our boats are half the weight of the lightest rigid boats in the world, even done in Kevlar and things like that. So that's a very big statement, and the reason why we can do it is because of the flexibility, similar to the way architecture changed in the 1930s when it went from, instead of brick and mortar, it went to steel and rivets and building a skeleton that flexes and moves and gives. And that's basically, in essence, the magic of skin-on-frame boats. Not to mention all the other advantages of just of speed and one-offs. And I think the biggest challenge that people have, or the thing that kind of freaks them out the most, is that they want the recipe. In Western boat building, we generally expect and we want to even pay for and just get a recipe delivered to us. When I say recipe, I mean like a plan or a kit. That says, okay, do this and part A and put part B together and screw this in and tape this. And skin-on-frame boat building, if you want to do one-offs and these kinds of things, especially with kayaks that are so individual, you cannot just present a recipe like this. It doesn't work that way. It's an art rather than a science. So, I know I'm getting away from your history question, but
no, I think that's a good point, Corey.
Yeah,
it's not like I call you and say, Corey, send me that 16-foot skin-on-frame kit for a guy that's 6'3", 200 pounds, and has bad knees or something.
Well, I can't. The reason why I'm bringing this up, I can't tell you how many calls I get for people asking, or emails, people asking for plans and kits, and they want a recipe and they want a secret recipe, and it just. We don't work from them. We never did and never had. I've done over 1,500 boats here, and all the students that come here have different requirements. Excuse me 1 minute.
No problem. We got a dog in the background.
Yeah, hold on. I got somebody here.
Okay. No problem. So we're back here, and so Corey, it sounds like the bottom line of this is these boats are highly individualized for the occupant or occupants.
They can be, for as far as open boats as dories and skiffs and tenders and things like that. They're not so critical in their dimensions, and because of that, this is where our future lies, and what I want to do is actually make videos. And wait, hold on one sec. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. No problem.
As I was saying, where our future is, we're going to actually prepare kits in a sense where we're going to provide everything but the wood material. So we're going to do it in a video format so people can see, and probably going to start with the Umiak because it's the one that's most interesting and they're most underrated, and you get the most bang for your buck, and they're the most dynamic. So we're going to that's our plans for this winter. We're going to actually make a video and give a center mold and transom options and beam options and length options and things like that, where somebody that's even a little bit savvy, I would say an intermediate level, that all I need to have is a table saw and a power planer and some hand tools, they can actually put one of these Umiaks together. And the first one's going to be an Umiak it could be from anywhere from 18 to 28 feet with the same center mold sections that we give. We'll also have a rudder plan and a sailing rig and things like that. So that's where that's going. But the kayaks are different. And because of that, that's why we've always done the classes here and overseen each one, because people's lives are at stake.
So, Corey, for those listening, could you just give us a brief description of an Umiak, what that is?
Well, the Umiaks are... they're a large open boat, and they were found from Siberia to Greenland. It's the only skin-on-frame boat that was consistently found in all the Arctic cultures, all the way across the Arctic. And they vary tremendously in size. Some of them could be under 20 feet, some over 60 feet.
Wow.
And basically, they look like they're a large multi-chine boat. They look like one of the old open gill netters, or even a New Bedford whaling kind of style boat. Some of them were hard chines. Actually, a lot of them further north where it's colder were hard chines. So they were flat bottom. They can put them on sleds and skid them on the ice. And I know they. In Barrow, they still use them for their winter whale hunts because they're light enough to take on sleds and bring across the ice and get them in the water where they can't use their trailers, and their heavier skiffs could break through. So they're still using the Umiak for their winter whale hunts there. You'll see a couple of them in the Dom-Meads. There's not a whole lot left around. But we've been building a lot of them, and they're just an extraordinary multi-purpose dynamic boat that can be, I have a 22-footer that I pull with a little 4-cylinder car. I don't even feel it on there. And it's a blue water boat. It's set up for electric power. It rows, it paddles, it sails. It'll take anything you throw at it. You can pick it up with 2 people. It's just extraordinary, just a fabulous craft. And
how much does that boat weigh, Corey?
The 22-footer with kind of stripped down, with its floors, but without the motor and batteries and things like that, I would say it's about 140 pounds.
Yeah, cool, very cool.
Yeah, and so you're talking about a third of the weight of even an inflatable that size, which is kind of hard to believe. It's just extraordinary, and you can beat it with a pickaxe and a sledgehammer. I mean, it's just very robust. They're very, very strong.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question here, Corey, is what level of skill is required to build a skin-on-frame boat?
Well, it depends on what boat you're building. For instance, in the kayak world, if somebody was a beginner or novice, I always recommend to start with the West Greenland kayak. There's only 42 pieces to that boat. It's a hard chine. There's very few ribs in it or frames. You only have to hit 3 points precisely, like 18 times. In other words, there's only 2 stringers, and you only have 18 ribs in the keel. So the wood bending is usually the trickiest thing. They're very simple to build, Dan. They're just hard to build correctly. In other words, to get the shape right, to sculpt them to the person, to their skill level, to the water they're going to be in, et cetera, to match their personality. Are they a racer? Are they a surfer? I mean, all these aspects go into the shape. So to have that knowledge on how to shape the boat to know how it's going to react is the real question here. As far as the students that come to the school here, anybody can do it. Anybody. We've had beginner, basic, paraplegics, 8-year-old kids. The programs I've been doing in Alaska, those native kids are all 8th graders, and we build 33-foot boats up there. Anybody can do it. But to get them shaped correctly is a tricky part. And to know, like anything else, to know the sequence, what to do first, what to do second, so you don't have to go back and do things twice. And that's precisely why I'm going to be working on these videos, just to show the sequence of our method that's been worked out and polished over the decades.
So on most of the boats, there's some steam bending required, and then what kind of joints are you using? Mortise and tenon joints for the ribs?
Well, we don't steam bend here. I never did.
Okay.
I've been bending wood even before I started to do SkinOnFrame boats a lot, and I always do it in hot water or boil bending. And there's no better way of doing it for SkinOnFrame boats, especially for things like Bidarkas and where you have a lot of frames to bend. I think the whole steaming thing goes back to when they were building ships and they had these enormous planks, and you could never have a vat big enough to put these big planks in. So you can put a couple of kettles in there and you can steam them and get it hot. The problem with steaming, you have a lot of time constraints, and you can do a lot of damage to the wood. It gets very, very hot. And I find the best thing for wood bending is it's the quality of the lumber is number one. And then I basically put it in a rain gutter type thing. I mean, we've got a fancy box, but it's basically a glorified rain gutter with some stoves under it. And about 150 degrees, you get them going for about an hour and a half, and you can just tie knots in them. Now, so we don't do a lot of steam bending. This way, say I usually do classes with 4 or 5 Bidarkas. That could be 250 frames, so I have to bend in a day. I could never possibly do it one by one in a steam box. It would make me crazy. I think anybody,
I understand. That makes sense, Corey.
People that try to do it at home have the same issues. I mean, they're just they get very, very frustrated, and it causes a lot of stress. In this case, you just put all the wood for the project in the water before you even begin the project. Let it sit there. Let it soak up. Let it hydrate. The day you're ready in the morning, puts a little bit of heat to it. Don't boil it necessarily. Just get about 150 degrees, and it just gets better and better. And you don't have to worry about the watch and the time. And if you don't get it to it, or something happens, or you don't get them all done, turn off the heat. Turn it on the next day or a week later. Doesn't matter. That's the beauty of doing it in hot water. Our success rate is over 98%. They all bend or none of them bend. Either the wood is good or it's bad. So you're not worrying about, am I doing everything out right with the time and with the steam? And you kind of eliminate all that human error kind of comes out of it, and you feel like you're not doing the cell structure, the damage to the cell structure of the fiber like you would with that real high heat steam. You can dry it out really quickly and do damage to the fiber.
What lumber species are you using, or lumber species, for your boats, Corey?
Well, here in the Northwest, and we're very spoiled. We have access to probably the best lumber there is in the world. So we're using a Western red cedar, which actually isn't even a cedar. It's in the arborvitae family, and we're using what's called Alaskan yellow cedar, which isn't a cedar either. It's in the Camericiferous family. It's a cypress. And both of that stuff is local. We're using old growth. We're finding stuff that's been salvaged, been laying out in the woods a long time. and then we process it from there. Let's take
Pause for a second.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Dan. We're back.
Okay, no problem. So next question.
We're talking about species.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to go a little bit further, though, I mean, depending on where you live, there's always a species of woods that's available and that can be used. I mean, you don't necessarily want to use Home Depot wood, but like, for instance, we'll get calls from the Midwest or Ontario or from the South. And in the Southeast, they've got the cypress. In the Northeast, they have the white cedar. There's always ash around, usually in North America somewhere, and ash is a great bending wood. So there's usually a species somewhere or something, and even if not, Western red cedar is just about available everywhere on Earth. So with that said, that's why we're going to kind of present a kind of a video in these plans where they can just pick up their own lumber. The best thing for people to do, though, is ask around and try to find the local mills, and ask the old timers, what's good, what species are good and what they have. You never know, the stuff's out there. Well, luckily, with SkinOnFrame Boats, we don't need a whole lot. I mean, even for an umiak that's 20 feet long, you only basically need to find 3 2x6s. That's it for your longitudinals. Everything else is short stuff, and that's always easy to get. So basically, for a 20-foot boat to find 3 2x6s isn't that hard. If you're doing a 30-foot boat, you need 6 of them. It's not a big deal.
Not a big deal, yeah.
And with 30-foot, you got 320s and maybe 318s, 314s, with your scarfs, and there you go.
Yeah.
So you don't need a whole lot of wood. And, of course, the kayaks require even less wood, 1 2x6 even. Will do everything. The stringers, the gunnels, the keel, and boom, there you go. So you don't need a whole lot of lumber, and it's one of the real attractive things with SkinOnFrame Boats. You get to work with real wood, not plywood, and not use a bunch of epoxies and glues, and which tends for the speed of construction. A lot of these other methods, like stitch and glue and things like this, you get excellent results. They're fun to build. I've done a couple of them. But the thing that kills it for me is all that epoxy work. I don't like it, personally. I don't brush this stuff out, and then you have to let it dry overnight and scuff it again and hit it again, and then it's just too much finish work. So the beauty on SkinOnFrame is you don't really touch any of the goopy, sloppy stuff until the last day, and then it still kind of sucks, but it's quick and painless. The urethane, you got a couple hours on the bottom and a couple hours on the deck, so you get about 4 hours of working with the chemical, but it's far better than doing it every day for the whole project.
Right. How about special tools or equipment required to build a SkinOnFrame boat, Corey?
Well, you don't need anything special at all. I've been working remotely for years up in Alaska with some youth up there, and we don't have a shop or anything. And we're building, 30-foot seagoing boats, 33-foot boats up there, and I just bring a simple bag of tools with me, some Japanese saws, some planes, spoke shave. I mean, basically, you don't need much. But with that said, you have to have a table saw to get your stuff to dimension. And if you don't have a surface planer, you can use a power planer or do them by hand. Like here at our school, we have more than everything that we need, and we have great equipment, but it's all 1920s technology. There's nothing fancy to it. Good table saw. We have a surface planer, an edge sander. We have a couple shapers, and that's about it. Do you have to have the shapers? No, you don't have to have the shapers. Do you have to have the routers? No, you can do it by hand. So basically, you need some good hand tools. The Japanese saws are a must because the cuts and the joints have to be pretty precise. You asked earlier about mortise and tenon. Yeah, we do mortise and tenon for the frames, for the ribs that they get done. And we use a router, but a hand drill and a knife will do them as well. Can you do one per second like we do? No, but but that's extraordinary, and you don't need to go necessarily that fast. So you don't even really have to have a router. You can do everything with hand drills, and of course it depends on the boat. Again, the Umiax, you really don't need anything. If you're going to have a transom on it, you'll need a scroll saw or jigsaw to cut out the transom because you're into plywood, but you really don't need much of anything fancy, and that's what's nice. We have a tool budget I set aside every year to get equipment here, and I haven't used it in the last 4 or 5 years. We just don't really need anything. Our Japanese saws last a long time, so you don't need much. But if you're going to invest in some hand tools, get good ones. Spend the extra $10, $20 and get the better one. And I mean, that's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about, is skin-on-frame, this building method, best suited to a particular boat design, Corey?
No, in my experience, and we've built a lot of different kinds of skin-on-frame boats here, more than I can count or remember, there isn't anything that is particularly difficult to do. The only one that comes to mind is we tried to reproduce, and we did reproduce, an extreme surfing boat that was done in rotomolded plastic, in a complicated mold, and we had all these triple reverse curves and compound curves and things like that, because it was never meant to be done in wood. And I mean, that one was weird to do. But besides that, I mean, sometimes you get into these tenders, and the really short ones can be a little tricky to get to bend them cold. You want if you're building a boat and it's long enough where you can spring everything cold in the longitudinals, meaning your gunnels and your stringers can all just bend freely, anything's really easy. When you start getting into like really full bows, where you need more bend than you'll get naturally, then it could get a little bit more complicated. Usually we'll do a bandsaw curve, and out of that one particular part could be a gunnel, and we might make it into 3 pieces. And I'm trying to give you an example that you can understand clearly. Let's say you're building a canoe, and the ends are upturned quite a bit at the gunnels, so it's got a nice smooth shear line. Then all of a sudden the tips bend up pretty sharply. You might want to take those gunnels and cut that on the bandsaw, and cut that, say you have a 3/4 by 1.5 inch, cut that into 3 pieces, and then make a simple little mold out of OSB or something and laminate that end little hook or curve into it. So the point I'm trying to make is, boats that have little whips and curves and things on the ends, they're a little bit more tricky to build than, say, boats that you can just spring all cold, like the kayaks and things like that.
Right. Okay. Very good. How about the cost of building a skin-on-frame boat compared to other building methods?
Well, there's kind of no comparison. And of course, a lot has to do with if you know what you're doing, because that has to do with waste and getting the right things. And, costs are kind of a scary question to answer, because you could say, well, how much does it cost you to build that kayak? And I can just look at it and add up what the wood costs and the fabric costs and say, oh, it costs $150. But did I take in consideration, or did the person that wood is very specific, and I had to drive up in the North Cascades and into the mountains and get it off road and get it from a mill, and I have special saw blades and the tooling and all the time milling it. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but in general, I would say it's the cheapest way to build a boat that there is. The other inexpensive ways I would think would be stitch and glue method is very inexpensive because the plywood I don't think costs that much. But I think skin on frame you can still build much cheaper, much faster, and in my opinion get much better results, and not just aesthetically but form and function, because you have all that shock absorption built in to your vessel, which is pretty handy.
Okay. And how about, you kind of just briefly addressed it, but how about the amount of time to build a skin-on-frame boat, Corey, if you could address that a little bit?
Well, again, I mean, it depends on who's doing it. There's a lot of, I know guys that build them in their garage. It takes them a year to get their frame together, where, we'll build 4 frames here in 4 days. I mean, but again, if you, generally speaking, it's the fastest way to build a boat, especially a one-off, a prototype. If somebody has an idea, a concept of something that's never been done before, wants to do a new type of proa or a stand-up paddleboard or anything like this. I mean, I'm talking extremes here, but a type of a wherry or anything. There's no doubt in my mind to mock up a skin-on-frame boat is the quickest, fastest, most efficient way of doing it. And even if say a company made a folding boat, I'm saying it because we have an affiliate sitting here in the room here that's involved with a folding boat company. No name to mention names here, but they want to come up with more forms, more shapes to integrate into their line. Well, they came here and said, "Hey, let's build. We want this type of boat. We want to make a rolling type of a kayak. Can we make a prototype here?" And it's like, "Sure." Well, we did it in a couple of days, 3 or 4 days, and it wasn't just a mock-up quickie. It was a real keeper. It's a real boat that you can use forever. And when we got it done in 4 days, and now they can paddle it, test it, put it through the trials, and then send it to the engineers to convert that into aluminum shapes and to fit into their takedown folding concept. Where if you were to do that, say mock it up in the old school way in a glass plug, oh my God, it takes months and months and months. And when you have that much time and money invested in it, you have to build it. I mean, even if it doesn't come out just the way you want it. So for things like that, it's very, very effective.
Yeah. So you mentioned a stand-up paddleboard. Have you built those? Can they be built on the skin-on-frame method, Corey?
Anything, like I said, anything can be done and anything can be made, and you can also mix different mediums together. Sometimes you can put a skin-on-frame deck onto a rigid bottom. The reason why I brought that up, I was trying to think of extremes, and new things that are happening, and I have been getting a lot of calls lately about paddleboard and guys that want to do them. And people have me? No, I haven't done it. I don't have really any interest in it. I have paddled an inflatable one that uses multi-strand technology. We've been looking at that for years to make inflatable rigid kayaks. I don't know if you're familiar with those. And that, it was miraculous. I mean, a bit heavy, but pretty cool. It rolls up in a bag and you blow it up and you get a stand-up paddleboard. But
wow.
I haven't personally, but there are people doing it because we've been selling them the materials to do it. It's just not my thing, and I haven't had anybody here to
Right. Okay. You can't do everything, right?
I'm sure one of these days somebody will come in and say, "Let's do this." And
yeah. So we're going to wrap it up here, Corey, with 2 things. One is if you would just kind of summarize briefly the advantages and any disadvantages of skin-on-frame building. And then secondly, tell us about your business and what you do at the Skin Boat School and how people can contact you if they're interested.
Okay. Well, as far as advantages and disadvantages, I can't think of any disadvantages. The only disadvantages, I'll start with them first. In the kayaks, There's only two, and the first one really doesn't count. But given the exterior finish of your boat, and then you consider the inside volume of your boat, you're losing a little bit of volume because of the wood frame. Okay, that would be considered a disadvantage. I don't really count that, but it can be. And the only other one, and this has got some validity, is they're harder to clean. When you have a hard shell plastic boat and it gets awash with sand and grit and things like this, which usually doesn't happen unless you're in surf conditions, something like that. They're harder to clean out, and that would be the only disadvantage. The advantages are countless. There's too many. You don't have the time and the megabytes, the bandwidth to handle. I mean, it goes on. The advantages are just miraculous. I mean, just the dynamics of form and function, how you can shape the boat and sculpt it on the fly and change your design halfway while you're building it. The speed of construction, the expense, the aesthetic pleasures, the weight, of course. It goes on and on. But as far as disadvantages, those are the only ones that I can think of. And if you design and shape your boats properly, they clean out really easy. They're designed to drain out. The way that the keelson, for instance, is shaped, it's designed as a rain gutter, so all foreign debris will rinse out of it, and everything's designed to drain out of it. Open boats, they don't have that issue. They might be a little harder to clean, but you can vacuum them out as long as you make the floors removable. In our case, we always make roll-up floors, so we can camp with our boats and tip them on edge, and we take our floors out and use them as tables. And the floors come out, and I mean, they're really easy to clean and keep clean. But my advice with people that surf them a lot or building surf boats and going to end up bailing a lot in them in the surf, just use a sea sock. Perfect. You'll never get a grain of sand in your boat. Just use a sea sock in those conditions, and there's very few people that do that.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about your business, Corey, and what you do and how people can connect with you.
Well, we've been operating since 1990 here in Anacortes, Washington, Fidalgo Island. We basically specialize in the Aleut Bidarka, but because we've done over 1,000 of them. They're very, very custom, individually built kayaks. But like I said before, we've built all kinds of hybrid, eclectics, surf boats, zone boats, open boats, tenders, dories, skiffs, sailing umiaks, schooners, rigid inflatables, semi-rigid inflatables. We have our own heat sealing equipment here for inflatable cloths. So basically, people come here with a concept, and most people stay right through. It usually takes about a week, and they build their boat and they go home with it. And I'm more of a consultant. I oversee them. I make sure their sequence is correct. First, this next. And for people that want to go home and build more of them, yeah, it's possible. If you want to do it with the Bidarka, it's harder. It's a very difficult boat to build correctly, but it can be done with good notes and good documentation. And if you don't wait a long time, keep things fresh. That's why if people want to come here and build a kayak, I recommend them that they build Bidarkas and not the Greenland kayaks, because the education's a lot better. You're going to get a lot more for your money. You're going to leave here with not just a more dynamic kayak, but you're going to get a much more expansive education, and you take that education and use that into other boats, and it'll help you and do you better in the long run. And we also have a store where we supply all the fabric and the coating and the lashing and all the hard to find things that took us, decades to locate. We're offering it to the public at extremely affordable prices. And we do most of it mail order. And we give excellent support. We answer the phone. We talk people through their needs and try to help them out. And we're going to continue doing that. We've dedicated our lives to this art and to sharing it, as instructors and teachers, and we're going to continue it. And it beats roofing, right? It's better than roofing.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Corey, can you tell us a little bit about pricing for somebody that wanted to come there and build a boat, what that looks like?
Again, it depends on the boat, but our general standard is the alley Badarka. We ask, we're a nonprofit. We asked for a suggested tuition donation of $1,200, and that includes everything, all the materials and instruction, and you go home with your boat. And a lot of people, we've got 10 acres here, and people camp out here, and we let them stay here as guests and things like that. Everything as far as the school, the store, we've got into making all kinds of green natural wood finishes now, which I personally have taken it very seriously. I've gotten very susceptible to the toxic solvents that are in everything, and there's no need for it at all. It's all for profit. And I kettle cook all my own wood finishes now. They're the highest quality. They're not available anything like it anywhere. And all this stuff and all this information you can find at skinboats.org. That's skinboats with an S.org, and all the links to everything are from there. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, well, very cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Corey. I know you're really busy, and you've actually got people there waiting to talk to you. So thanks so much for being on the podcast, and we'll be in touch.
It's been my pleasure anytime. And again, if anybody needs help or questions, just find, I'm easy to find, skinboats.org. Give us a ring, and we'll help them out with their project.
Okay, very cool. Thanks a lot, Corey.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. All right, bye-bye. Thanks, Corey, for taking the time to do that interview. I know you're a real super busy guy. It was really fun. I always learn stuff on these interviews. I didn't realize you were boiling your ribs and not steaming them. That makes total sense because you can do so many at a time, and it just sounds simpler. So I'm going to have to try that, but I'm going to have to get a hot plate or something to do it. Again, I would encourage you to check out Corey's website, skinboats.org. I mean, for $1,200, if you want to build a SkinOnFrame boat, you go up to Corey's. You can camp there if you want to for a week or whatever it takes. Build your boat. It's custom made for you. You've got an expert watching. Everything is there, material, supplies, and when you leave, you have a 100% finished boat. So I just think that's an amazing deal. If you were to go out and buy some glass or high-tech kayak brand new, you'd spend more than that. So this is a custom-made boat that's going to be lighter, and it's going to really be fun to build. You're going to learn a ton from Corey, so I would encourage you to check that out. I would appreciate it if you would connect with me by email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. Now, I want to say here on emails, I do receive quite a few emails now, which I love that. I don't always reply within the day or the next day, but usually I'll try to reply within 24 hours. Sometimes it'll take me 3 or 4 or 5 days to reply. So if you don't hear right back from me, I will get to you. I promise. That is my promise. Thanks for listening today, folks. If you'd like to help support the podcast, go to my homepage, hookedonwoodenboats.com. There's some banners on the side of some companies, and if you click on those and make purchases, I get paid a small commission, and I would appreciate that. Also, please check out my ebook by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/ebook1. And that book is $4.99 for somebody that's just getting started in the wooden boat game or getting ready to build their first boat. It's a great read, lots of information and resources, and it'll help you go through the decision-making process on what to build and how to build it and all that stuff. If you're not in the wooden boat game, folks, it's time you get in and do something, build a boat or buy a boat or rent a boat, touch a boat, buy a Wooden Boat magazine, get some lumber, get a hand plane out, Make some shavings, make some sawdust, buy some epoxy, do something, get started. It's a lot of fun. Great pastime. I love to, I sit at a desk and work all day, my day job, and then I come home and I go out in my shop and I just have a blast. Doing all the woodworking and building boats. I'm already excited thinking about building my next boat, but I got to get the Scamp sold first. Which, by the way, again, a reminder, hookedonwoodenboats.com/scamp for sale. Thanks for listening today, folks. Great to have you. Have a great week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless. Until next week.